it was more of a casual racist as opposed to a hardcore racist. You know, he was very relaxed about it. I think. So, but I think I can't really blame him for that. I think it was a generation thing. And see, my dad was very proud to be English. He was very proud to be from Lancashire, and he was very proud to be from Burnley in particular. And he told me once when I was a kid, he said, Ian, I'll tell you something. Right? It were towns like Burnley. It were the cotton mill towns and the coal mining towns. It were towns like Burnley, son, that built this country. And you know what? He was 100% right. But even at that young age, I had this sort of cynical streak, and I was a cheeky little bastard. So I said to him, well, that's all well and good, Dad, but are you sure they couldn't finish building Burnley first? Doesn't seem like too much to ask, does it? But yeah, so that's my parents dealt with. I've not hired a hitman or anything. Parents, I want to tell you about my grandma as well. So I love her to bits, but she's a bit weird, right? See, in our family we've got this sort of, it's kind of a rite of passage. When you reach the age of about 13 or 14, this is when my grandma stops calling you a dirty wee beastie. And you sort of graduate, you go up in the hierarchical scheme of our family, and then she calls you a dirty wee shite. And the first time she called me a dirty wee shite, I was very proud. Obviously, I'd been promoted. But it was weird to hear my grandma swearing because she's a devout Catholic. You know, and well, she professes to be, at any rate. She professes to be a devout Catholic, and she said all those, she does all those little Catholic idiosyncrasies like saying that, oh, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and the angels. She always does the dance as well. And what's the other one Catholics say? Oh, yeah. You're born in hell! Sinner! Miscreant! The fallen angel Lucifer will rise from the pit and claim your soul for his own! You dirty wee shite! So, it's not just my family that are weird. It's, you know, they say you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family, and that is true. But I choose friends that are just as fucked up as my family. I suppose I'm asking for trouble, but I've been doing comedy for a few years now, and I've made some friends in comedy. And one of them asked me at a gig in Manchester. You see, he's a Dutch fella. He's a lovely guy, and he's a very good comedian. And he had a gig coming up in Burnley. So he asked me what the people of Burnley were like. And, well, I couldn't tell him the truth. He's Dutch. I couldn't exactly say, well, they don't tend to like foreigners. And even though you speak weird, you're not as Arabic as some, so you should be alright. I couldn't exactly say that to him. But I decided to tell him a story about one of my friends in Burnley who's actually in the audience tonight. I won't name him because I'm sure he'll just let you know who he is himself. But I've honestly no idea why I picked this story. But one of my friends from Burnley, I once asked him a hypothetical question, and I said to him, if you'd accidentally killed a girl, would you have sex with her corpse, knowing that realistically you could not be in any more trouble than you already were? And this is 100% true, by the way. This is 100% true. And so I put the question to him, and he thought for literally 2 seconds and said, yes. Said, yes, I would. And then I'd run her a hot bath so I could have her again later. I think my comedian friend cancelled his gig in Burnley. See, I've got another friend who's actually from Burnley, but he no longer lives here. I've got a friend called Rob. And he lives down in London now, and he's a manager of a really good restaurant down there. So he's doing quite well for himself. But you wouldn't have thought this would be the case if you had met him when I met him. So I met him when I was about 14, and he was a year older, about 15. And he's a lovely guy, and he's one of my best friends, but how do I put this? He's not exactly the sharpest tool in the box, if you follow me. And all he was concerned with when I first met him was getting high. But like I say, not exactly the brightest person, so he went about this in all sorts of weird ways. I mean, I remember he ran out of glue once and tried sniffing staples. It's that kind of thing. And Rob used to come up with all these grand schemes, grand ideas and things, and he came back from holiday on Spain a few years ago, and he came up to see me, and he had another one of his grand plans. And what he wanted to do, basically, is because, like I say, he manages a restaurant now, and I worked as a chef. So he wanted me to move over to Spain with him and open a Spanish-English fusion food restaurant, which on the surface doesn't sound like a bad idea. It doesn't sound too crazy, until you realise what he wanted to call it. I was thinking, maybe he's got a bit of sense by now. You know? Maybe he's wised up a bit. Because he's had this idea, it doesn't sound too bad. And he goes, oh, I've got a name for it as well. So, oh, brilliant, what's the name? He goes, Spick and Spam. Same old Rob. That's the point on Dragon's Den when Duncan Bannatyne goes, oh, mate, you dirty wee shade. But not all friends are real friends. We all know this, and I'm not talking about friends who might betray you or something. I'm not even talking about children with imaginary friends, because I actually have a friend who made friends with his phone. Does anyone know anybody with an iPhone 4S? And they spend more time talking to their phone than they do to you. It's this thing, talking to the phone and the 4S, and I asked this friend. It's just idle speculation, really. I thought, I wonder what the weather's going to be like when we go over to Skipton tomorrow. He goes, oh, I'll ask Siri. Who's Siri? My phone! I'll ask my phone! I thought he'd gone mental. I didn't realise Siri was the name of the service. I said, no, don't trouble Siri. I'll just Google it on Brian. So, while we're on the subject of smartphones, I want to tell you about the best headline I've ever read. It was on a tech website a few years ago, because we'd already had like the iPhone and things like that, and then Google was launching its own operating system for phones. And I was just browsing the web, and this article title, the headline caught my eye. It said, Google's new Android to make Apple and BlackBerry crumble. That's what he called it, a smartphone! Yes! And then I realised you have to download the custard and it costs you extra. But you can't be too hard on people who make friends with their phones, because I had a digital friend as well, and that was my Tamagotchi. Yeah. There's one or two younger people in the audience looking at me now going, what the fuck is he talking about? Tamagotchi, is that some sort of weird Japanese fetish boy? And in a way, it was. But the Tamagotchi was a digital pet that you could keep on a keyring. And, you had to feed it, and if you didn't feed it, it'd get ill. But you could give it medicine if it got ill. And if you fed it too much, it'd put little digital poos everywhere. And you had to clean them up, and if you didn't clean them up, it got ill. It's found out of its time ill than anything. But my Tamagotchi was a rescue Tamagotchi. See, it had obviously been neglected. I found it on a bus, and all its screen was cracked. And his battery was very, very low. And he was literally caked in digital shit. And I took him in, and I nursed him back to health. I repaired his cracked screen the best I could with super glue, and I cleaned up all his digital poo. And I replaced his battery for him. But then I remember the saddest day of my young life was when it came time release my pet Tamagotchi back into the wild. It was a sad day. We sort of drove him up into the country and released him. I said, "Go, run free. The shackles of slavery are yours no longer. No, don't look back. It's just making it more difficult for both of us." But it was heartening to see him frolicking with his parents, a digital egg time and a Sinclair ZX81. So I've been talking about friends so long, I've left hardly any room for relationships, which tells you something about me. See, I've had a number of failed relationships over the last year. And I know some of you are looking and thinking, that can't be right, he's never had a relationship. But I assure you it is the truth. I just want to tell you about one of them. Not exactly the relationship, just one thing that happened. See, I was feeling in a somewhat cheeky mood one time, and my girlfriend at the time, I sort of slapped her on the arse. Sexy bum. And she bollocked me. Said, "Don't say that!" "Why not?" She goes, "Because I hate my bum." "Why do you hate that?" No, I did ask that, but the answer is far too long to repeat here. But in the end, after I'd heard all the reasons, and I said, "Well, does it really matter? I mean, I like it, and you don't even have to look at it." And she said, "No, I can't see it, but I know it's there. Like Predator." It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Ian Singleton. I promise I'm quitting, I promise. Oh, God, I'll just take a seat here for a moment.
Why did you have to take a chair?
There you go, that's some performance art. A man drinking, looking really rather lonely and scared. It's a good impression, isn't it? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to remind you, can you keep your speaking to as quiet as possible when the comedians are on? I'm going to introduce... Oh! Don't get me in a shouting match, I've got a microphone, love. You'll lose. Trust me, you'll lose. Oh, I've got all Lancastrian again. I always do. I'm quick to anger, I become Lancastrian. Anyway, speaking of Lancastrian, ladies and gentlemen, our next act. Oh, he kind of looks ready. Mr. Stephen Rowley!
Hello, you alright? What's the point of the microphone? I know what you're thinking. The answer's no, and not Jesus. I get it all the time, although I have just turned 30, and apparently this is the age he got crucified, so if this don't go well, I know what to expect. Seriously, I have turned 30, I really wasn't looking forward to it, I was dreading it, thinking, oh, should I throw myself downstairs and have done with it? I'm 29 and 364 days. But a friend of mine said, look, right side, in 2 years, you'll be able to legally have sex with someone half your age. So every client, it's on the line, I look forward to that. But to celebrate me turning 30, me and a few mates went to Prague, bit of a piss-up sort of thing, and we met this one guy over there, a drunken imbecile, who just happened to be called Michael Jackson. I thought, this is fucking awesome. I can't wait for this to kick off, and he was following us around, he wouldn't leave us, and eventually a barman decided to kick him out, and he did it in the best way I've ever heard. He walked up to him, he said, listen mate, I know you're drunk, Billie Jean behind the bar's told me about it. You might have had a good night so far, it might have been a thriller, but now it's getting bad, and that's dangerous. You need to go home, look at the man in the mirror, and realise that people don't want to rock with you. You're not a legend anymore. Now, beat it. And by the way, Earth Song. Yeah, totally, we were right today. But being in Prague, I got a chance to look at the Olympics from a different country, and it was a lot better than watching it here. The thing that I didn't like about it was